Most cameras today include an auto mode that is designed to make photography easy. Auto mode analyzes the scene and automatically selects shutter speed, aperture, ISO, focus settings, white balance, and sometimes even flash output. For beginners, auto mode can produce acceptable images in many situations. However, auto mode has one major limitation. The camera does not know your creative intent. The camera only tries to create what it believes is a technically correct exposure. A photographer may want to freeze motion, blur motion, isolate a subject, create a dramatic silhouette, or intentionally brighten or darken a scene. Auto mode cannot consistently make those artistic decisions. This is why learning shutter speed, aperture, and ISO can dramatically improve photography results. These three settings form what photographers call the exposure triangle. Every photograph is influenced by the relationship between these three controls. Understanding how they work together gives photographers complete creative control over the final image. Shutter speed controls how long the camera sensor is exposed to light. A fast shutter speed allows light to reach the sensor for a very short amount of time. A slow shutter speed allows light to reach the sensor for a longer period. The faster the shutter speed, the less motion blur occurs in the image. The slower the shutter speed, the more motion blur becomes visible. A shutter speed of 1/4000 second can freeze extremely fast subjects. A shutter speed of 1/1000 second is often used for sports photography. A shutter speed of 1/2000 second is commonly used for birds in flight. A shutter speed of 1/500 second works well for many outdoor action subjects. But shutter speed of 1/60 second may begin showing motion blur if the subject is moving. A shutter speed of 1 second can create dramatic motion effects. Imagine photographing a race car traveling over 150 miles per hour. If the camera uses a shutter speed of 1/50 second, the car may appear as a blurry streak. Details such as sponsor logos, tire tread, and body lines may become difficult to see. Now increase the shutter speed to 1/2000 second. The race car suddenly appears frozen in time. Every detail becomes sharp. You can see the driver's helmet. You can see reflections in the paint. You can even capture tiny pieces of rubber flying from the tires. The same principle applies to sports photography. A runner sprinting toward the finish line moves incredibly fast. A basketball player performing a slam dunk moves quickly through the frame. A football player diving for a touchdown happens in a fraction of a second. Using a fast shutter speed allows photographers to capture these moments with crystal clear detail. Bird photography provides another excellent example. Birds flap their wings extremely rapidly. A slow shutter speed often results in blurry wings and soft details. Using 1/2000 second or faster can freeze every feather. The resulting image reveals details that are impossible for the human eye to see during normal observation. Shutter speed can also be used creatively to show motion. A waterfall photographed at 1/1000 second appears sharp and detailed. Every water droplet is visible. Photograph the same waterfall at 2 seconds and the water becomes silky smooth. The entire mood of the image changes. This demonstrates that shutter speed is not simply a technical setting. It is a creative tool. Aperture is the second part of the exposure triangle. Aperture refers to the size of the opening inside the lens. This opening controls how much light enters the camera. Aperture values are measured using f numbers. Common examples include f1.4, f1.8, f2.8, f4, f5.6, f8, f11, and f16. Many beginners find aperture confusing because smaller numbers represent larger openings. An aperture of f1.4 allows significantly more light than f16. A large aperture creates a shallow depth of field. Depth of field refers to how much of the image appears sharp. When using f1.4 or f2.8, only a small portion of the image remains in focus. The background becomes beautifully blurred. Photographers often call this effect bokeh. Portrait photographers frequently use wide apertures. Imagine photographing a person standing in front of a busy city street. At f16, cars, buildings, signs, and pedestrians may all appear sharp. The background can become distracting. The viewer's attention may wander away from the subject. Now, photograph the same person at f1.8. The person remains sharp. The background melts into a soft blur. Street signs become colorful shapes. Buildings become smooth textures. The viewer's attention immediately focuses on the subject. This is one of the fastest ways to make photographs look more professional. Many people associate blurry backgrounds with expensive cameras and professional photography. The reality is that understanding aperture is often the key factor. Aperture also affects landscape photography. Landscape photographers typically want most of the scene in focus. They often use apertures such as f8, f11, or f16. These settings increase depth of field. Foreground rocks, middle distance trees, and distant mountains can all appear sharp simultaneously. This demonstrates how aperture controls the visual style of an image. ISO is the third component of the exposure triangle. ISO controls the sensitivity of the camera sensor to light. Lower ISO values produce cleaner images. Higher ISO values allow photography in darker conditions. Common ISO values include 100, 200, 400, 800, 1600, 3200, 6400, and higher. ISO 100 generally produces the highest image quality. Colors appear cleaner. Fine details remain sharp. Noise is minimized. Noise appears as grainy speckles throughout the image. As ISO increases, noise becomes more noticeable. At ISO 6400 or higher, image quality can begin to degrade significantly depending on the camera. Fine details may become softer. Colors may lose accuracy. Shadow areas may appear rough or grainy. Consider photographing a sunset. During bright daylight, ISO 100 is often ideal. The camera receives plenty of light. Image quality remains excellent. Now, imagine photographing an indoor basketball game. Light levels are much lower. A fast shutter speed is still required to freeze player movement. Opening the aperture helps gather more light. Sometimes that still is not enough. Increasing ISO becomes necessary. Raising ISO from 100 to 3200 allows the camera to maintain a fast shutter speed. The trade-off is increased image noise. This illustrates one of the most important concepts in photography. Every exposure setting affects the others. If shutter speed becomes faster, less light reaches the sensor. A photographer may need a larger aperture. The photographer may also need a higher ISO. If aperture becomes smaller, less light enters the camera. Shutter speed may need to slow down. ISO may need to increase. Photography is a constant balancing act between these three settings. This is why manual control is so powerful. Manual mode allows photographers to choose all three settings themselves. Instead of the camera making decisions, the photographer decides what matters most. A sports photographer may prioritize shutter speed. A portrait photographer may prioritize aperture. A landscape photographer may prioritize depth of field and image quality. Manual mode gives complete control over these choices. Auto mode often struggles in difficult lighting situations. For example, photographing a person against a bright sunset can confuse automatic systems. The camera may expose for the sky and leave the person too dark. It may expose for the person and blow out the sunset. Manual settings allow the photographer to intentionally choose the desired result. Auto mode also tends to be conservative. It often selects settings designed to avoid obvious mistakes. Professional-looking photographs frequently require deliberate creative choices. Manual mode provides that freedom. One of the most effective demonstrations for viewers is a direct before and after comparison. Photograph a race car using auto mode. Then photograph the same scene using a manually selected shutter speed of 1/2000 second. The difference in sharpness becomes immediately obvious. Photograph a portrait using auto mode. Then photograph the same subject at f1.8. The dramatic background blur instantly creates a more professional appearance. Photograph a low-light scene at an extremely high ISO. Then compare it with a properly exposed low-ISO image. Viewers can clearly see the increase in noise and loss of detail. These visual comparisons are powerful because they show immediate results. People learn fastest when they can see the difference for themselves. The biggest misconception in photography is that expensive gear automatically creates professional images. In reality, understanding shutter speed, aperture, and ISO often has a greater impact than buying a new camera. A photographer who understands these three settings can create stunning images with modest equipment. A photographer who relies entirely on auto mode may struggle, even with the most expensive camera available. Once photographers understand how shutter speed freezes motion, how aperture controls background blur, and how ISO affects image quality, they gain the ability to produce photographs that look dramatically more professional in almost any situation.